Welcome everyone to the Sydney WorldPride Rights Conference report back session. So we're here upcoming partnership with ILGA Asia, Intersex Asia, ASEAN LGBTQ Network, ASEAN Asia Caucus, Youth Voice Discount, in collaboration with Blue Diamond Society, Crisis Response Mechanism, Hong Kong Marriage Equality, Kyrgyz Indigo, Proud to be as Laos, and Transgender Rights Consultant. So today we just have a quick session on what it was like for those people who are able to attend the Sydney WorldPride Rights Conference that was done recently, about a month ago, for you all to kind of get the report back on to seeing what's the feelings of activists that were able to attend and what are the recommendations going forward. So this session will be recorded and hopefully we'll get a chance for us to have a bit of discussion and then also to post this on our social media and website as well for those who are not able to attend to also listen in on this. So I'm very thankful everyone for joining this session and for our speakers for giving up their time to take part and giving us personal reflections and some things that we could do better for the next WorldPride, which will be held in Washington, D.C. in 2025. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Manisha, who will be reporting back from the Asia Caucus pre-conference. Manisha is the director of Blue Diamond Society in Nepal. Manisha, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Midnight. Hi all, namaste. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So I'm focusing the first two panels in the Asia Caucus on my reflection, which was hosted by APCOM, and ANTRA is the Australian New Zealand Tongji Rainbow Alliance, and AGMC is the Australian LGBTIQ Multicultural Council. So these three network hosted the Asia Caucus. So first, I was so impressed and motivated by the opening remarks by the Dr. Judy Tang from the ANTRA and Regional Advisory Group Chair of APCOM from Brian Chong, and the Haika Chu, who is the executive director of the Intersex Asia. So they highlighted the need of the leadership for unified contribution to the world for the great unity. They welcome the repeal of the section 377 in the Singapore. So they mentioned they need to do more on engaging the laws and policy in the Asia Pacific region. In this regard, they highlighted the role of the regional networks. Importantly, we need to know that the intersex is the different from LGBT, and that's why the intersex issues need to be addressed independently in order to be acknowledged. But we all have to share the common SOGIE issues. That is very beautiful takeaway, apart from the hiker he mentioned during the opening remarks. And after the opening remarks in that first panel, there was a panelist from the different activists from the different sub-region to set the scene from our community on the issue, challenges, opportunities to advance the LGBTIQ rights. So there was a panelist from the Kyrgyzstan, Army from the Central Asia, Charlie Liu from the East Asia, China, Naomi from the Southeast Asia, Philippines, and Janet Ali from Pakistan. She represents the South Asia, along with the Ryan Salverio from the Asian SOGIE Caucus. So these panel, the community activists, they highlighted the challenges, the problems that we are facing in our sub-region, in our country. So the Amir mentioned that the authoritarianism that in the region exists, that distract the citizenship from the real economic and the social problems. And since homosexuality is still criminalized in the Central Asia, out of the 5 countries, 2 countries still they criminalize the homosexuality, like Uzbekistan and the Turkmenistan. And in the Kazakhstan, we came to know that there is a consent rights for the straight people and for the transgender people also, but there is a discrimination. So for the straight people, the consent right is 16 to 18, but the transgender people is 21. So when we are talking about equality, we need to think about equity, as Amir mentioned, in that in the Kazakhstan is that cases is happening. In Charlie, you mentioned that the communities that have been fallen, if we not follow the ideology from the government, then we are targeted. So this is not only the cases of China. It's this the issues is all over the country. If we are not following the ideology of the government, we are subjected to scrutinized, discriminated, targeted, and the ostracized. So there is still some prejudice, stereotype of thinking exist in our country, in our region, that we are perceived as we don't have the ability to have the children. That stereotype still exists. And Naomi highlighted the patriarchy, the challenges which is connected to the capitalism, colonialism, and the nationalism. She also mentioned the gender binary system, and the Jannat mentioned the transphobic movement, gender, the anti-gender movement in our region, in our country. She shared what happening in the Pakistan regarding the transgender protection bill, and the Ryan mentioned about the LGBTIQ person in the Asia engaged in the complex dynamics of the political and the cultural forces that re-echo the colonial legacies and the subordination and the conservatism. So what I observed in this first panel is, the participant highlighted the gender binary system, patriarchy, criminalization, complex dynamics of the political and cultural forces, equality versus equity, less opportunity, anti-gender movement, and if we don't follow the country ideology, we are subjected to the target. We are targeted from the country, and prejudice mindset and the some stereotype of the beliefs thinkings are exist in our region, in our country. And participants also highlighted the need of unified movement in advancing the rights of LGBTIQ, to combat with the anti-gender movement, working with the allies within the LGBTIQ groups and within the feminist group, and need to know better understanding of our own diversity. And the LGBTIQ people need to continue speaking out about our human rights-based SOGIE issues. So what I observe, this is a great space that we have secured in the Asia Caucus. Most of the time, we don't have such a space in those international forums. That is a very excellent part of this Asia Caucus. And thanks organization who hosted this caucus, and the great combination. We have the different, the regions, South Asia region, Southeast Asia region, East Asia, Central Asia, and the panel. We all need to work more hard to bring the voices of the Middle East also in the next kind of, the same kind of Asia caucus, and we need to bring the intersectional voices, like voices from the disability, indigenous, and the caste system in the future. And now I would like to move on the second panel, that was the opportunities for the advancing the LGBTIQ rights in the Asia, where the different, the prominent LGBTIQ envoys, ambassador, independent expert, they highlighted their role in supporting the LGBTIQ equality in the Asia. Lord Nick, who is the UK's special envoy, was there. Jessica Stone, special envoy to advance the human rights of LGBTIQ from the United States. And there was Ambassador Chantal Wang, who is the US Director, ASEAN Development Bank, and the Victor Madrigal Borolos, who is the United Nations Independent Expert on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. We were informed from the caucus that UK has allocated over 13.5 million to enable the the government, civil society, business, parliamentarians in their in our movement for the human rights of equality of LGBT plus people. And now UK is finalizing their own plans for the new multi-year program. The special envoy from the UK, he shared this issue. So our role as an activist, as the regional network, country network, as a community, we need to work with the UK government. We need to advocacy and lobby for the UK government for the distribution of the funds to our region. And Jessica encouraged us to be in touch with the US Embassy she mentioned that at least 4 times in a year, the meeting, not only for the pride or the reception, but some meetings that need to be discussed with some burning issues with the ambassador in the US embassy. And she also encouraged us to send the data for every year in the July for the human rights report that US government is compiling the data for the human rights issues of the LGBTIQ community. So she requested us like that, and the Ambassador Chantal from the ADB, she mentioned that the safeguard ADB has a safeguard that seeks to ensure that no one is harmed from the ADB project. The ADB is now in process of updating its safeguard policy statement, and the safeguard review is an important opportunity for us, for the LGBTIQ community, to engage with the to updating the safeguard for the, which should be inclusive of the LGBTIQ people. And Victor highlighted the importance of the engaging and using the UN human rights system to defend the human rights of our communities. He will be stepping down in the October and this year, and the end of the second term as SOGIE mandate holder. So we all civil society need to support for the next mandate holder as we did for the Victor. So what I observed in the second panel is there are the ambassador LGBTIQ envoys. So we need to advocate a lobby for our own the government in our region who are supportive on the LGBTIQ rights to have the same the positions like UK have, United States have. We need to do the lobby for that, and the we all are in one room, the ambassador, special envoy, independent expert, and the community. We interact with each other. So it is very wonderful opportunity for us. We don't have such kind of opportunity and forum in several times. We are not invited. So this this space is very wonderful space and opportunity for us, and for the next the same kind of event, we need to bring the government agency who are working on LGBTIQ rights in our country, in our region, and some human rights institutions, so that the different government can the agencies who are working on LGBTIQ rights, they can learn each other what is happening to the another country, what is happening in advancing the rights of LGBTIQ issues in the global forum, in the regional forum. So I suggest like that. So these are my observations. Over to you, Midnight.
Thanks so much, Manisha. Very comprehensive feedback on not just the two panels, but also from the the speakers in between as well, particularly in the introduction, setting the scene. I'm wondering whether Henry, Heike, or Ryan had anything to add to what Manisha just mentioned. Is a hands up from you, Henry?
Oh, no, I'll just speak later during my turn. I agree with everything Manisha has said. It's very comprehensive. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, thanks, Manisha. Before we go on to the panel where Justin will be moderating, I know that Manisha has to go in some time when we're speaking. So maybe can we get a group photo before Manisha has to go? And if you can have your camera on, if you're comfortable. And then, our team at APCOM will then take a group photo. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Can someone on our team count? And then, okay, everyone look at the camera. So have your face to the light. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and smile. Okay. One more. 3, 2, 1, and smile. Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Manisha. I'll hand over to Justin, who will run you through the first panel.
Great, everyone. Yeah, great. So hi, I'm Justin. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Voices Count, and I'll be leading the panel on individual perspectives from our community. So prior to the Human Rights Conference, and a consultation was done, and community members indicated what they would like to see at the Human Rights Conference, and that included, of course, aspects of inclusivity, especially for grassroots communities, intersectionality, and also including communities that are the most marginalized and affected by human rights violations across our region. Also, recognizing the paramount importance of policy and legal environment. But the question now is whether those topics and those issues were actually addressed during the Human Rights Conference. So we will now hear from activists, from advocates who are our colleagues who were actually present during the Human Rights Conference, and we asked them whether or not what you would like to see actually did surface and did actually become an issue that was discussed during the Human Rights Conference. So we will hear individual takeaways from those who were Bupa Lao. He is the founder of Proud to Be Us Laos, from Lao PDR. Proud to Be Us was ranked in the top 9 of the World LGBT Change Heroes by The Guardian in 2016. We also have with us Esther Leong, campaign manager of Hong Kong Marriage Equality Hong Kong. As campaign manager, she actively plans educational activities related to gender and equality and is committed to exploring to showcase LGBT rights from an artistic and cultural perspective. We were also supposed to be joined by Amir from Kyrgyz Indigo from Central Asia. Unfortunately, Amir couldn't join us today. And from South Asia, we have Nayab Ali, Executive Director of Transgender Rights Consultants, Pakistan. Ms. Nayab Ali is an accomplished researcher, well-known philanthropist, and esteemed social scientist with a wealth of professional experience working towards gender diversity, inclusion, livelihood, and economic empowerment. And she is also one of APCOM's Transgender Asia Hero Award recipients. So welcome to our virtual stage, Anan, Esther, and Nayab Ali. A virtual round of applause for the 3 of them. I'll start with Anan. Anan, what do you think were the highlights from the Human Rights Conference when you were there?
Hello, Justin. Hello, Midnight. Hello, everybody. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to speak with all of you here. And I'm sorry that I couldn't turn on my camera because I'm still in my pajamas here. I usually start my day at 2 p.m. plus. Well, by the way, to get back to your question, my overall observation, of course, it's the first time in Southern Hemisphere to have this great event organized there. And I think that is accessible and quite convenient for many of us here to travel there. And I could see the overall vibes of inclusion that spread into our region, which is which was quite a landmark. And also, I noticed that I will be quite broad, but I think that it will sum up all the highlights and topics that were discussed there. I could sense the strong solidarity between the CSO and the government partners in Australia, how they work together. Because some of you might have heard myself spoke a number of times about, working with the government. I know that it doesn't work in some countries. Some countries require a strong strong voices to urge for policy change. But in my context, we really want to work hand in hand with the government partners in order to push for policy change. That's what we've been doing in Laos, and something that I could relate my action in Australia is that I see that political support from the Australian government was something that quite impressive. As you all saw that many ministries show up there, and not just show up and spoke, but also came up with tangible interventions to help the community. Like the health ministry also announced some funding for health research among LGBTQI, and there was an announcement of the equality, Global Equality Fund, and I think that it is a great step. And also, something could have done better. From my observation, I think that unfortunately, I didn't see so many representation from people like us in Asia. I think that there should be more representatives from Asia, from ASEAN, from Intersex community from Asia, and transgender community in Asia. I think there should have been more. I was quite not shocked, but kind of I expected more to see representations from our region, especially speaking on the panel, the big panel, the big plenary room, to share about the issues happening in Asia. And I'm sorry, maybe I'll just go through the whole question. And one thing that should have done better, I think I shared this with the Australian Human Rights Commission last week during because in Laos there is a human rights dialogue between the Australian and government of Laos happening in December, and I share exactly the same thing that I'm going to share here. I think there should have been more roles and efforts from the Australian government in the Human Rights Conference or the Sydney WorldPride Human Rights Conference. For example, the Australian government should have extended the invitation to the government of ASEAN or government of Asian countries to, invited them to see, to explore, to expose to the LGBT Human Rights Conference that we all attended in Sydney last 2-3 weeks ago, as a opportunity for them to learn and to understand what was discussed there. Because I think that it's not just the community work alone. The government is not just giving speech or, attend as a political figure, but also to, use it in their bilateral and multilateral intervention as well. If the Australian government have extended the invitation to other governments of our countries here and attend one session or two, even your opening, that would have been a monument and more meaningful ceremony. So that's my overall observation. And lastly, I'd like to share some thoughts. I don't know that it applies to your countries or not, but in our context, when we use this technique, it looks like we can work with the communist government in Laos. Even LGBTQI is viewed as a Western influence, Western import, but when we use this, it looks like it works a bit. So contextualizing or localizing LGBT rights, but use global intervention is also quite an effective way to go. And also integrate LGBTQI rights in the comprehensive development approach. It looks like it blends in quite well. So thank you so much for having me, everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anand, for those very. Just want to highlight a few things that you mentioned. You mentioned on a strong government partnership, especially the Australian government. You also highlighted on collaboration and solidarity was, I guess, a central feeling or theme that you had when you were there, especially I believe amongst our activists from Asia and the Pacific as well. You also, at the very start of your talk, you mentioned about the fact that when it's closer, with proximity being a factor, it became more accessible as they organized the Human Rights Conference and WorldPride in the Southern Hemisphere. Therefore, it was more accessible, especially for us in Asia Pacific. Thank you so much, Anand, for those insights.
Thank you.
I'll move on now to Esther. Thank you. I'll move on now to Esther. Again, Esther is from a campaign manager of Hong Kong Marriage Equality. And I actually have the same question for Esther, basically on the highlights from the Human Rights Conference and what do you think they could do better. But I was wondering if Esther could also maybe give us a bit of insight as to one of the recommendations from the earlier consultation, which is on intersectionality and inclusivity. And maybe Esther can give us a bit of insight whether that intersectionality was actually achieved during the conference.
Sir, Justine, would you mind to repeat your last question? I just got not really clear about it.
Oh, I was saying maybe you can give us a bit of insight on whether the Human Rights Conference achieved the intersectionality and inclusivity which we wanted it to achieve.
Okay. Thank you, Midnight, and thank you, Justine, for having me in this conversation. And really great to meet everyone here. And maybe I just share about some about the overall feeling on the conference. And we are not only hear many different voices from various regions, but also hear many vulnerable voices, such as refugee and those from war area, whose the voice are often difficult to be heard. Well, it's really great that we can hear it in this conference. Say something, someone from Ukraine, someone from Syria. And well, you know that the world today is appear very easy to obtain information. You know, you got phone, you got computer, but those voices are always misheard by everything. So that even that's really great that we can hear that. And also, apart from all different panel, we got many great speakers, many great sharing. But I really appreciate that in Sydney WorldPride Conference, they got different workshops. Say there's a one workshop I would like to highlight is a one-on-one speed networking, where you know that when you get into the conference, you're always sitting there and hear every brilliant sharing, but you really lack a chance to get in touch with other participation and really lack of chance to get in touch with maybe randomly get in touch with other people. And that's why in this speed networking, we have chance to get in touch with every single one who joined this workshop or who joined this panel. It's really great chance to meet new friends. And you know that when you're meeting some new friends, you will have some new idea and new collaboration between that. Then that is really great. And then I would like to highlight one more point is by observing the Western world, we were using that the Western world in this world. We see that they collab many things. They have strong linkage between each organization, or they have strong linkage between individual and the government. But when we see back in the Asian or our regional, maybe we need to reinforce that. Yeah, and I believe that establish regional alliance would be useful. While every region are facing some similar issue in promoting LGBTQIA+ issue, such as religion opposition, it must be acknowledged that the Asian Pacifics have their unique culture and the human behavior is different from the Western world. That maybe it will advancing will make up every challenge for us in advancing the LGBTQIA+ issue in our country or in our area. Maybe a regional alliance would help us to share the problem we have encountered and the possible solution. Yeah, that's it.
So Esther was basically mentioning a bit about one of the good experiences that Esther had was that particular one-on-one networking workshop which Esther attended. Esther also mentioned a bit about reinforcing collaboration and building allyship within Asia Pacific, because that allows us to, discuss and dialogue, especially as we want to highlight the uniqueness of experiences and cultures within Asia Pacific. Maybe Esther, would you like to also conference could do better in the next conference?
I think that we would add on some panel or sharing about the Asia region, as the previous speaker mentioned, that maybe in this conference, it seems that we cannot find so much about the Asia region. Say, I am not saying that the sharing about the Western or about the Australia or about the other area is not important. It's also important for us to knowing what's going on in the international world. But maybe when I participate in this conference, I will feel that, okay, a little bit distant for me and to those information. I would like to know that information, but how about those happenings surrounding us, say something about happening in Indonesia or something about Korean or about the Taiwan. So that's all I would like to know, and that's all region or area I can reach out, or maybe it's more close to us, and those information or those experience is really useful for us to, maybe we were facing the similar problem, or maybe we are facing a similar issue that's really important to us. That's why maybe for the next time, how about the add-on, or maybe we can invite more people from this area to share about the experience or about their vision in all this issue.
Thanks, Esther. I'm just going to echo what Esther said, the lack of Asia Pacific sessions and the feeling of being distant, especially when there's like so many going on. And usually that's the problem with these big conferences. There's so much going on, and a lot of people are having discussions, breakout sessions here and there. There's very little space and opportunity to discuss similar issues within same regions, like within Asia Pacific. So thank you for that, Esther, for highlighting those also in the Human Rights Conference. Is not with us today, but we're hoping that you could also share their experiences as well. But now I'll move on to Nayab Ali from Pakistan, and who is the Executive Director of Transgender Rights Consultants Pakistan. Hi, Nayab. Are you here? Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning or good afternoon. Also, same question to you as well. What were the highlights from the Human Rights Conference, in your opinion? But I'd love to ask another question to you. One of the recommendations during the consultation was around the paramount importance of policy and legal environment, such as discriminatory laws, for example. Do you think that particular topic was highlighted during the Human Rights Conference?
First of all, thank you, APCOM and rest of the partners for giving me this opportunity that we can reflect, self-reflect our learning from the Human Rights Conference, and definitely we are able to share with our colleagues who were not able to attend. And afterwards, Justin, your question is very important. Definitely, I will answer in two parts. The first will be like something positive that was very important for myself, as what I learned from the World Human Rights Conference, that is, I see the beauty of your celebration, the generations. There in the Sydney World Human Rights Conference, I see the organizers and the Australian land was celebrating their ancestors who actually, paved the ways where we are running, the who sacrifices their lives, and they are truly, acknowledging their efforts in the movement that we often forgot in our region. Especially, I say, you might disagree, but definitely that is the important, and relating our work with those forefathers who actually, contributed a lot. That was the good thing and the positive thing for me, and I take that thing with me from there. And on the other part, the best part from the conference was we were able to interact with the envoys, the special envoys, especially I will mention here Jessica Stern. And I was very happy to know about, like, everyone is aware what is happening in our region, especially in Pakistan. So they have a lot of information. They kept saying, like, we have an eye on what is happening in terms of legislative thing, what is happening in terms of, like, Transgender Rights Protection Act 2018 in Pakistan is going to strike down and it's under threat. So they were aware, and other thing was, like, every donor who was present at the World Human Rights Conference is willing to fund LGBTI movement in especially South Asia. And here is the gap. So like they all the time say, like, we need you guys to contact us, we need you people to talk with us, we need you people to highlight your issues, so definitely we can come and fund you, especially US government and Australian government as well. So that was the key thing, and the important for me as well. Like I was able to build the alliances there, and rest of my colleague, and there are some positive things definitely. So there is always area which can be improved, and one of them was like, there was a little number of representation, especially I will say, like, from our country. Definitely we got representation in the plenary session as well, and in the caucus sessions as well. But my neighbor country, the India, and the other country, they didn't got representation in the plenary session. So definitely that was the biggest questions of the biggest concern for me. Like, there was no equal representation in the panels, in rest of the things. Like, their voice should be heard on all these levels. And the number of scholarships that I see, like in Pakistan, we got 3 scholarships. From Pakistan, we just 3 people got the scholarship, and all of them, I will share here a personal experience. Like, when I go to submit my biometric to the Jerry's, which is the rest of the country, you have VFS Global, which collect the biometric on behalf of Australian High Commission. So that was interesting thing. Like, they don't have option for gender neutral passport. Like, I have the gender neutral passport, and the Jerry's and the VFS, they refuse, like, hey ma'am, we can't take your biometrics because we don't have options. So but it is a good thing that Australian government was hosting. Australian government was taking them on board, because it's a major shift from the arms conflict to the human right politics. So I you know, I learned and I observed in the human right conference, like, yeah, the government is like they are active, and now I think they change their perspective, and everybody would just want to take lead, and want to be good in the world by supporting human rights, and they want to say, hey, like, we are human rights champions. So that is a good opportunity I see for the LGBTI people. Like, we can and organizations, they can get benefit from, like, yes, we can approach to US government, we can approach to UK government, we can approach to you know, the Canadians, we can approach to the Australians, and like and yes, we can, you know, get funding and get support from all of them. And in terms of what is the last part of your question was, definitely there's a lot of recommendations in terms of legal thing, and there was a panel, I remember, on decolonization. But yes, decolonization is very important for South Asian countries and in terms of Asia and Pacific. But there was no panel which was discussing actually you know, the strategies, what kind of strategies that we can adopt to decriminalizing the Section 377 in our country. There was no, you know, panel on sharing good practices in for example, Muslim countries. For Pakistan is a Muslim country, and definitely we use a different strategies, we are different things, we are shifting the narratives from another aspect to another one. So, you know, there's a different, and there's a similarities between Malaysia, and because 54 countries are Muslim countries, so definitely there should be something like LGBT perspective and good practicing to decriminalizing Section 377 and getting protection for the rights of transgender people. So how people can get benefit from that, and how people, you know, can replicate that thing. So that can be, you know, it can be added in upcoming human rights conference. And yeah, that was from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. That was very rich and very. Let me just summarize and highlight it. And what was good is opportunity for interaction with global personalities, especially with the UN and government leaders. This allowed activists to bring the issues straight to these high-level personalities. I also like what you said about the lack of representation or no representation during plenaries. It's like discussions about our region are not in the plenaries, but on smaller sessions on the side, which doesn't really allow us to bring the issues forward. The lack of scholarship was also an issue that was brought up by Ms. Nayab. And finally, I just want to highlight this one because I did ask about discussions on laws and policies. But Ms. Nayab Ali mentioned that when we talk about laws and policies, it's always about the problem of lack of laws or discriminatory laws, but there's never any discussion about how to solve these problems, the solutions, the best practices to decriminalize and to lobby for the removal of these punitive and discriminatory laws. It's always about the problem, but never about the solution. So thank you so much to our three amazing speakers. I believe Midnight said I don't have any more time, but we would like to thank Ms. Nayab, Esther, and Anan for your experiences and sharing. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Justin, for that really wonderful facilitation for our three speakers. We are running a little bit out of time, so I'll just move on to our next reflection from Henrico, who is the Executive Director of ILGA Asia. We've heard already from the gaps from our previous three speakers. So let's see from the ILGA Asia's perspective, what are the kind of gaps in the programming for the recent Human Rights Conference in Sydney. Over to you, Henry.
Thank you so much, Midnight. At the outset, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to everyone who has spoken. I think all of you are very distinguished, and thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights and expertise on the pressing challenges, such as the regression and also progression that's ongoing in our region, affecting our communities, across Asia. I think the wealth of local knowledge and expertise in our region presents a unique opportunity for us to achieving positive change in the area of human rights for LGBTIQ individuals. However, to achieve sustainable progress, it's also critical for us to invest in preserving and growing this local knowledge. And recognizing and compensating local knowledge and expertise is essential, but it's equally crucial to prioritize the agility and responsiveness of organizations, CBOs, CSOs, to the evolving needs of the community. So I think to this end, we must also explore innovative solutions, such as establishing a system that can sustain local organizations beyond the scope of a particular program or subject. With these objectives in mind, we must also seek support from government donors who recognize the critical role we play in advancing human rights. While there have been positive developments in the region, as been reflected by our colleagues earlier, such as the decriminalization of homosexuality in India and Bhutan, very recently in Singapore, we still continue to witness regressive trends. For instance, the situation that's happening and unfolding in Afghanistan, in Iran, the continued military rule in Myanmar, the encroachment towards transgender persons and rights in Pakistan, the new criminal code and pornography laws in Indonesia, the proposed NGO law in Thailand that will serve as a severe risk, I think, to some of us who are based there. These all serves as stark reminders that there are still ongoing challenges faced by our communities, by different individuals, especially the most marginalized among us. Furthermore, we have all agreed that the COVID-19 pandemic has amplified the need for our groups to reach the most vulnerable and amplify the voices of our community that are often overlooked by governments. Just reflecting back in the past 2 years with the 16-country reports that ILGA Asia has published, one of the most salient and common challenges that we have seen in the challenges section is that during the pandemic, CBOs are forced to close down, CSOs resources are also depleting as well. And that means that there's really a seriousness for us to really come together to think, not just for post-pandemic and pandemic preparedness, but how do we sustain ourselves during and after the pandemic. So by providing a platform for sharing the lived experiences of LGBTIQ individuals in our region, we can inform targeted interventions to improve their lives. For instance, there is a need to underscore the crucial role that a lot of us organizations are playing this role to advance human rights of LGBTIQ individuals. But the question is, are we working together enough? Are we coming together enough? So I think that there must be like a constant, arrangement or like a periodic, reporting back. That would be a good spotlight actually. And I think that events like this would also actually help. So thanks to all the partners, thanks to APCOM for organizing this. To that end, I think all of us, we have to urge government, continue to urge our donors, existing current donors and government donors to prioritize the needs of queer communities in our region and continue to invest in our work to ensure that we can respond quickly to the needs of our communities, right? It is crucial for us to recognize that supporting our work is not just about internal reporting, but also investing in our communities on the ground. So by doing so, I hope this reflection can reflect a little bit on how we can achieve lasting change that empowers and enable LGBTIQ individuals in our region and ensure that all our rights are respected and protected. That's all for me. Thank you, Midnight. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Henry, for that personal reflection. So yeah, from what I gathered, Henry just really mostly talking about, like how do we ensure that the gaps here is actually about getting more sustainable funding for community groups like ours on the ground in the region. How do we then use the power of all of us together to talk about the regressive trends in the region and strategize together on particularly the resiliency and sustainability of our groups, because we are the ones that are reaching the most marginalized already. And then how do we bring that value to those that can, really sustain our movement in the future, given that there will be more aggressive trends coming up as well. Thanks so much, Henry, for that reflection. Next, we'll just go towards one of the panel discussions around advancing LGBTQI human rights in Asia that Brian Chung, who is the Regional Advisory Group Chair of APCOM, was part of. Brian, could you just give us a bit of oh, great, you've got a presentation. Give us a bit of a personal reflection from that panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Midnight, and thanks everyone for joining us in today's session itself. I'm not going to do a personal reflection, rather I'll be doing a summary of what actually the the four panel at the panel discussion actually shared. So this particular panel session itself is titled The Advancing Law for LGBTQI+ Equality in Asia Pacific. It took place on the third day of the Human Rights Conference itself. So the content that you shared that you'll be seeing here on these slides itself, all the images as well as the content belongs to the respective panelists. I don't claim if it does not belong to me. So, so these are the people who were at the panel itself. So from the left-hand side, you will see Valentina Richmond. She's the director of the Cook Islands Central Policy and Planning. That's besides her is me. And also we have the stream host, which is Claire Roche, the Deputy Secretary, as well as the Chief Operating Officer, who is from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australian government. We also have Jennifer Liu, who is the Director of Asian Programs at Outright International. Joining us also is Peter Reading, the international human rights lawyer from Hong Kong, and Midnight is our facilitator at that panel discussion at the event itself. There's quite a bit of things that we covered in the 45 minutes in the panel discussion. For this particular shareback, I'll zoom into two areas. One is the advancement of advocacy work done by reported by the various locations, and then the lesson learned as we implement those work itself. So starting from Taiwan, so most of you should be very familiar that Taiwan has successfully called for the same-sex marriage, and that is in May 2019. So that's one of the major advancements in the Taiwan itself. The activists and the organization in Taiwan are continuously working on various issues related to the same-sex marriage. As Jennifer rightly pointed out, there is same-sex marriage, but it's not marriage equality. So there are a lot more areas within the marriage conversation that needs to be worked on, and the NGOs as well as the activists are continuously working on that. More recently in Hong Kong, you see that Hong Kong have actually had a sort of a landmark case itself. The Hong Kong top court itself has actually found that the Hong Kong government refusal to allow two transgender persons to use their preferred gender on their identification card without going through a full reassignment surgery is actually a breach of their human rights. So that particular case was in February 2023. That was shared extensively by Peter himself. And last but not least, at the panel itself, I also talked quite a bit on the repeal of Section 377A, which we finally completed in terms of the process in November last year. So these are the three areas that we have across the three locations that we have actually achieved quite a form of advancement. Valentina also shared with us from the perspective of the Cook Islands. They're still working on various things. These are some of the key things that the team herself and the team is working on in terms of the decriminalization campaign. So she shared with us on the four areas that they want to sort of couch the campaign around. First is actually the conversation around love and acceptance. They also talk about how human rights are universal. Everyone is entitled to their rights itself. And the discrimination against the LGBTQI people is unacceptable and illegal. And also the conversation is around how it's actually not about having new rights for LGBTQI person. It's not about creating new laws or new rights. It's actually simply talking about how people, how the LGBTQI population in Cook's Islands should also enjoy the same rights as everyone else. Last but not least, it's also not about a decriminalization of, it is about the decriminalization of sexual act itself, because the heterosexual population on Cook's Islands are not criminalized for consensual sex they are undertaking. So it's the conversation at this stage and the Cook Islands is not about marriage equality. Last but not least, I want to share with you some of the key things that we have actually heard from the three panel about lesson learned itself as we continue to do our advocacy work. Early on, some of the earlier panelists actually shared with us that there are some things that we have not heard during the Human Rights Conference itself. What are some of the lessons learned? And hope this particular slide itself, as well as the share back with you, might be useful for some of you who is working on advocacy work in your respective country. So I'm going to start from the left-hand side, which is on Singapore. So this really is a summary of what we feel as a group of activists feel that the things that we've done in Singapore, how it has actually moved us to where we are, to the final repeal that we have achieved last year. And it will continue to be tapped upon when we work on the other issues faced by the LGBTQI population in Singapore. So first is actually about how we are able to mobilize the community to increase the visibility and awareness in the general populations. We have also went through several rounds of constitutional challenge. We have actually gone through 2 rounds of constitutional challenge, one of it which I'm personally involved in. And also we have actually gone through 1 round of parliamentary debate and petitions itself. So we have actually gone through both the legal rights as well as process in the parliament in Singapore. We also engaged extensively with the wider society, whether it's with the corporate in Singapore or whether it's with the professional body. And also we have leveraged on the UN mechanism, whether it's using the Universal Periodic Review cycles, as well as the CEDAW itself, right? The organization in Singapore have actually submitted shadow reports to urge the member organization to bring these particular issues to Singapore when this mechanism is in place. Last but not least, we've also engaged over time. We have progressively engaged more actively with our Singapore government to share not just the issues faced by the Singapore LGBTQI populations, but also the human rights violations faced by the community. So that's the lesson learned from Singapore activism work itself. Here I will attempt to summarize what I've heard from the Taiwan as well as the Hong Kong speakers. So in Hong Kong, they will continue on the strategic litigation, very much like the case that I've shared earlier on. They also see value in working with the business sector on advocating as well as learning, and it's also about public awareness. Hong Kong activists also found that the international solidarity, not just on the LGBTQI issues, but also on various human rights issues, is an important approach to take. Last but not least, Peter also shared on how the Hong Kong LGBTQI activists have also leveraged on major LGBTQI events itself, such as the upcoming Gay Games, to promote awareness and creating an inclusive society. I'm going to go on to Taiwan for the last bit of the sharing itself. So Taiwan, Jennifer actually shared extensively on how the organization and the activists reframe the narrative that the LGBTQI+ community is part of our society and community. It doesn't come from a Western culture. It's also about finding common values and creating new language to start the conversation. In Singapore, when Jennifer visited in Singapore, I had a brief chat with her on how Taiwanese activists have not just start the conversation in a Mandarin setting, but also have actually used create conversations, languages, and context in their local dialects itself, so that they can reach out to more non-Chinese speaking mainstream population in Taiwan. And also, Jennifer also shared with us on, for many issues, the organization activists have actually learned and understand how they can work more collaboratively with allies in the political space itself, and that can actually help to impact the daily life of the community. Of course, there's also one thing that she shared about how Taiwan activists and the organization have been able to leverage on the democracy movement in Taiwan, and that helps to move the needle quite fast as well. All right, so these are the two areas I want to share. I want to do this share back with you. I've got these slides. I'll let Midnight share with you later. Thank you, Midnight. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Brian. They are very comprehensive, and as Brian mentioned, that I will also share some notes from this meeting and the I guess the PDF that Brian just showed us. Will also be included in that. Brian, I don't think I will have any questions. I'll do a summary because I think that was very comprehensive already. I'll just move on to the next section that many of us already talked about, particularly on the resourcing the movement for the region and engagement with the Australian government, particularly when Anand was talking about the announcement from the Australian government. So the networks have been engaging with the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And we'll hear from Heike Chiu, Executive Director of Intersex Asia, and also Jin Chong, Executive Director of ASEAN LBQ Network, on the conversations that they've been having around resourcing the movement for the region and how they are also trying to engage with the Australian government in terms of supporting that movement. I'll start off with Heike. Maybe you can give us a bit of background and where we are up to in terms of Intersex Asia's discussion with the Australian government. You have to unmute yourself, Heike.
So, okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Very clearly, yes.
Thanks for this opportunity to invite me to join this talk. I was honored, to be invited in the almost the last minute to go to this SOGIE WorldPride and also the pre-conference for donors. And personally, I feel this design is a good one to have a donor conference before the human rights conference, because it means that donors can meet us, and also actually there are much more donors than in general in the meeting. In the meeting like that we have in ILGA Asia and other conference, because this donors conference specifically to have donors, and not only donors but also government people to joining. And I was running around, so I didn't kind of enjoy all the meeting, but I have some good impression about the donors meeting, because I feel that because I met many our donors in the meeting, but also many donors that we don't know before, and I think it's a good opportunity for our donors who supporting LGBT in Asia to meet other donors who hasn't, and that is a good opportunity for them to listen to us and listen to each other. And also I think in the meeting we also hear many government people come to share their perspective. In my impression, most of them are very positive. So I think this is a good beginning. I don't know if it was a design in the past, but I think it's a very, very good design. And other than that, because I was actually invited by Equality Australia, but because the Equality Australia is also the co-host this donor meeting. So with GPP, Global Philanthropy Project, and I actually was one of the how is it that I also joined the report that they they wrote, to offer to the Australian government to look for, to suggest them to go to give more resources to LGBTI community in Asia Pacific region. And in my opinion, this action is quite successful because it seems that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has very positive response to this report. And I also personally have a big, a long talk with them to understand the new issue for them. Actually, intersex is a very new issue for the people from the DFAC, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I personally feel that I had a good communication with the DFAC people and help them to understand intersex issues more in Asia. Yeah, so but I think in general, I feel that for this conference, also with the Human Rights Conference, I feel that the scholarship actually too few for intersex people from Asia, because it's I only see actually we only have one intersex person from Asia got the full scholarship. I was invited as the speaker of the panel, and Intersex Asia support our co-chair Jeff Kakanda to join the conference, and it is very it's much too busy for us. I hope that in the future that we, because it's a big conference and we need to meet many people, and I feel that we need to increase the scholarship for intersex people, because actually Jeff applied this conference, but he didn't got selected, so that's why we had to the self-fund, to support Jeff and to join the conference. So I also think that because it's too expensive, we didn't join this made decision in time, so we didn't got full ticket for Jeff to join the whole conference. So it's a pity. Yeah. But I also want to say that actually meeting people from Australian government is a good experience. I really feel that if there are government people invited from Asia, then that would be a good opportunity for them, to learn from each other, because I feel the attitude of the Australian government people, they are very, very gentle and very respected and very, very positive to LGBTI human rights, this issue. And if there are, Asian government people can be invited and to join this kind of conference, I think they will learn a lot, from this. Yeah, and I personally feel that because in the end that Australia government did agree to support $3.5 million to Asia Pacific or LGBTI movement. Yeah, so it's not the ideal amount that in the GPP's plan, but it's a good beginning. And actually the government promised, the amount will be increasing in the future. Yeah, so I personally think in the resourcing part, we did achieve, at least the first goal, but we achieved something that can start, and actually the continue job is we still continue working with GPP and DFAC to see how we can implement, this promise. And yeah, and so in general, I feel that we really need to strategize the participation, more participation from Asia last time in Washington, D.C., right? Since now, otherwise it will be too expensive for organization to, to self-support our member to join.
Thanks so much, Heike. So just a summary would be like you found the whole engagement with the Australian government representatives that were there very approachable, and they were listening to issues particularly around intersex that you were bringing on board. You were very happy with the engagement on the report that you partner with Equality Australia and the Global Philanthropy Project to ensure that there's more funding for the region. That has come with an announcement of 3.5 Australian dollars for the region, and you hope that funding will actually increase. Jean, let's get your perspective. How have you been engaging around discussion on resourcing the movement?
Yeah, I think Heike's summary is very good, but I'm not so diplomatic. So the DFAT has not invited us to the consultation, but I know a number of you in the meeting, like Henry and a few of you, campaigned for us. We also lobbied them to include us, which they did in the end. But I think they do not seem to be quite prepared with dealing with the diversity of the Asian LGBT groups. The second thing is that the 3.5 million is a great start, but it's a really small amount for more than 60% of the population in the world. Is nothing. I think many of us, whether they say it or not, were very frustrated that in the end 1.5 million was given to Global Equality Fund, which I have reflected to DFAT, saying that giving to the Global Equality Fund is good, but it is very, very hard for regional groups. What more grassroots groups to apply and having the kind of capacity to get the kind of funding because of the requirement for reporting financial reports every 3 months and monitoring evaluation. I said that, what you're doing is you're creating a lot more obstacles to us. This is what I told them. So the remaining 1 million after segmenting out is for the entire region. And then the discussion was still about who should we give to be intermediaries to it. I think all the Asian regional groups here, I think we came up quite strongly that we don't want any Global North groups to be the facilitators of this fund. For me, my personal feedback was I rather they gave to an Asian funder, whether it's Women's Fund Asia or Urgent Fund Asia Pacific, because first, they know the region well, they are funders without programmatic agenda, and third, they know how to work with governments. So to me, those are natural selection. There were other suggestions about Australian organizations. My feedback was, what do they know about Asia? We've never seen them in our conferences. So there's no pre-relationships with them. So I think it's important to tell them the truth and be really candid about our needs and requirements, which I'm very frank. But the good thing about this conversation is that they are aware of the challenges, and I think they've also told many of us they're going to have dedicated staff dealing with this grant making process. But for LGBTQ women, I think I've said this in different settings before, but during the donors conference, GPP announced their research for the latest research around 2019 to 2020 about funding. So they have Asia Pacific they segment out by region. So Asia Pacific got 5% of global funding, which is for about 580 million global funding. 5% of 580 million is nothing, okay? So, but one of the things I did with GPP is I asked them to further segment out the different identity groups, and LBQ funding for Asia alone is just 2.8 million. And that is 0.24% of the global LGBT funding. And then if you go further down to sub-regions like Southeast Asia, it is just 580,000, 0.1% of global LGBT funding. The other thing that came out from the donors conference is that these statistics say LBQ focus, but it doesn't mean that the money goes to LBQ groups. So one of the key things, recommendations that came from me and some other people is that the money needs to go direct to LBQ-led groups, which is very important because the money is not going to the ground. Despite this 580,000 for Southeast Asia, the research by Astria and Mama Care shows that the external average funding for LBQ groups in Asian and the Pacific is only $1,170, $30 more than Central Asia. So it's the second lowest. So it just shows you the extent how the region is incredibly underfunded. And I think the last challenge that, or maybe I shouldn't say challenge, the last recommendation that we gave to the funders is not to take the easy way out. A lot of times they want to give to an intermediary that they're comfortable with, or they cover all the identity groups, but it doesn't work that way. And a number of donors, key donors, have also highlighted this issue because all the different identity groups have different nuances and challenges they have to deal with. So it is better to fund specific groups to address some of the challenges in the region. That's my feedback.
Wow, thanks so much, Jean. There's a lot of very candid feedback, particularly around the need for funding to actually go to groups that really matters and strengthening their capacity to be able to kind of receive those funding. You also mentioned about, 3.5 million seems quite a lot, but then it's not very much at all, given that globally, Asia region already receives 5% for LGBTQI. And if you go to segment, that is even much less. And the recommendation is not for the Australian government is not to take the easy way out, is to identify intermediary in the region that can actually work with multiple groups as well. I think those are great recommendations going forward, and I'm sure we'll. I think for the regional networks right here, these are ongoing conversations, and we'll keep pushing the Australian government to really invest in where the funding needs to go to. Thanks so much, Jean. And now I'd like to move on to Kansa Vina, who is the steering committee of the crisis response mechanism from Sakaswara in Indonesia, to talk about Indonesia and the criminal code that we know is looming. Kansa, thank you so much for joining us. I know there's been some conversation around Indonesia at the Human Rights Conference, and this is a chance for us to get to know a little bit about those conversations and how you'd like for the people here to support Indonesia going forward. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Midnight. The first I want to say about how the new criminal code in Indonesia to impact for the LGBT community IQ here. The one of the problem in the new criminal code that is really highlighted in the media is regarding the impact of the living law of provision. The provision could increase the vulnerability group of the marginalized and the minority group, especially for the LGBTIQ+, particularly those who live in the conservative area. It can be used as a legal basis to criminalize charging on the ground of the customary or the religious morality. But without the new criminal code, the LGBTIQ have become target of discrimination and the violence. So we here have the 56 local regulation on the public order and imposing the cis heteronormative normative family values. And then after the criminal code was legalized at the beginning of the year alone, there we were 11 discriminatory local regulation against LGBTIQ+. The aim of the local regulation is not only to criminalize, but also to rehabilitate for the LGBTIQ+ individual. But the problem, it is not rehabilitation, but it is the torture perpetuated by the state. Also in the future, there will become more case of the discrimination and violence targeting LGBTIQ+, because there is not the state is not protecting for us. According to the most tolerant Indonesian, they accept the difference but not sexual deviance. Instead of protecting us, the state actors are busy using the LGBT community issue as the political tool to gain the votes. Also, hate speech is approaching the political year more and more violent. For example, the political use the what we call it they can say if there are LGBT in environment, shoot them, and it's lawful for their blood to be drunk. Also, there say it's no rooster made with the rooster. And all expression at the heart that manifests into discrimination and violence and the strengthening by discriminatory policy. The new criminal code is new terror for us. In the Indonesian context, I think in our movement, especially for LGBT, we don't expect we have the pride parade or the same-sex marriage for the right now. Yeah, maybe the basic need is we just want to live as the no discrimination and how we live, not be afraid. And also we have the safe house and how the government can protect the LGBT community. I think the situation can be more what we call it, more case because the new criminal code also especially for the Indonesian after the ratification and the new criminal code in December 2020. And yeah, I hope that more and more international partners will know about the current situation in Indonesia, especially in the local area, because the target LGBTIQ through the discriminatory law regulation, also the threat of the torture from the conversion practices, hate speech, also we afraid about the another case, the number of the case of the persecution that will be increased. More and more friends of the who are in solidarity, we can strengthening one of one or the one in another. I think this is the update in the situation of the LGBT in Indonesia, but yeah, we still, especially for the LGBTIQ movement here, we still the consolidation to how to make the strengthening solidarity even in the local, in Indonesia, also the support from the the international support for us in here.
So
I
thanks so
think
much, Kansa. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what support that you are requiring from the international friends?
Yeah, I think if we have the especially for the even the government like the last we know we have the UPR also. So many countries support the Indonesia to push Indonesia to have the anti-discrimination law also. And then the good news, the government agree with that. And then I think this is so one of the example we can push not only in the LGBT people here, but in the international support can the push the government, especially the Indonesian government we have to anti-discrimination also to protect the LGBTIQ in Indonesia. I think that's all for me. Thank you, Midnight.
Thanks so much, Kansa, going through issues that the local LGBTI groups are experiencing, and also asking us particularly to use the multilateral and unilateral, I guess, channels to put pressure onto the Indonesian government to support the anti-discrimination law. We are a little bit running out of time, but we have one. Oh, hi, I can see Ryan just popped up to just give us a reflections on, like, some of the recommendations going forward for the 2025 WorldPride Human Rights Conference that will be held in Washington, D.C. So Ryan Severio is the Executive Director of ASEAN SOGIE Caucus. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Midnight. Thank you so much, APCOM, for this opportunity, and warm hellos from Bangkok. I'm in Bangkok, but from a different meeting, just sneaking out from the conference. Yes, 2025. Listening to all of you, there's one word to characterize what the conference is all about, what WorldPride is all about. It is a space. And I'd like to use the concept of Gaventa when they conceptualize space as seen as opportunities, moments, and channels where folks can act potentially affect policies, discourses, decisions, relationships, and that affect their lives and interests. In Gaventa's concept of space, it's very crucial that it isn't a neutral entity. Rather, it is a space where power relations do take place. And how power relations can both influence the process and the outcomes. And this power relations is something that I'd like to underscore in my reimagination of 2025. Number one, why is it that global conferences like the Human Rights Conference of the WorldPride takes place in the global north? Why is it happening always in developing countries? Why can't we push for the organizers to put it within the global south? Is it because that the global south, the developing countries, aren't pro-LGBT enough? Maybe from a realistic standpoint, it can be, but maybe we can find spaces where there is a possibility for government and civil society to collaborate on having an LGBT inclusive space. Like, say, for example, Nepal, or maybe Timor-Leste, amongst others. So that's number one. Do these spaces replicate unequal power relations between the global north and the global south? Are these spaces replicating privileges? Again, being there in Sydney is a privilege. ASC doesn't have much money to send a lot of folks from Southeast Asia. I'm so glad that we have seen our friends like Jean, Henry, folks from Indonesia, amongst others, being there. But we understand that there are more organizations within Southeast Asia who would love to have access to these spaces. Why isn't there, for example, a hybrid mechanism to enable folks who can't be physically in Sydney to participate online? That's number two. Number three, do we replicate expert hierarchies? I've been noticing during the conference that it is an expert-led methodology. You've got a panel, and then folks like us would ask questions. But as they say in Australia, we recognize that there's a diverse set of knowledge, indigenous traditions, blah, 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 blah. There is a lot of expertise happening in the room, but the space itself doesn't allow much for those experiences and expertise to be shared. And this is where I'd like to point to move towards too. I reimagine 2025 to be a space where folks can exercise power with more spaces for folks to showcase projects, for folks to network, not just through the networking space where we have coffee and stuff, but to have a deliberate process where people can have more intimate discussions and identify joint initiatives. What else? Third is power too. I hope that it will not just be a space where people can just talk, but to move towards having a potential action. In Sydney, at least for some of us, it was quite clear. Our advocacy agenda there is to push the Australian government to commit funding. Can we have something like that in 2025? But not just funding coming from the US or from the global north, but also for groups to identify joint causes that we can work together. Like, for example, for us in Southeast Asia, one of the countries that we really have to look into, Indonesia. How come there wasn't, say, for example, a joint statement that happened on Indonesia that's coming from the organizers, or the ongoing conflict in Myanmar? Yes, people are talking about that, but we haven't seen so much action moving forward. So I hope in 2025, it will not just be a talk shop in itself, but an action-oriented space where we can exercise power with in order for us to collaboratively influence and have power to affect change. So that's my reflection. Thanks so much.
Very good reflection there. Thanks so much, Ryan. Yeah, talking about these different power dynamics and privileges. I think many of the regional networks also mentioned that, they don't have a lot of funding to take people there. With APCOM, there were two of us, me and Brian, and we have to share a room to take part, because it's not like, this is something that is part of our normal programming. And, APCOM is even part of the community partner, so like, it's not like it comes already as part of our work here. I want to open this space a little bit for those that want to maybe give some reflections on your own, or if you have some recommendations for the 2025, or how do we then, I guess, work better together for joint action, for example, as Ryan mentioned. So you just put your hand up if you'd like to reflect. Nobody. That's okay. So some of you have already sent in some questions when we asked for the during the registration process, and I think it's already reflected in a lot of the recommendations from our speakers. For example, they want to see more activist speaking from the ASEAN region. They want to see more scholarships coming from our region there. And to understand the process more about how the Human Rights Conference come about. Some of the topics that I want to see for the next conference is about decriminalization and talking about the human rights for Burma, and a specific recommendation for South Asia panel to discuss about human rights. I think those are those are the main recommendations here that are a bit different to what has been discussed so far. Oh, sorry, one more. Discussion about holistic LGBTQI health session across the region, representations and with different narratives. All right, we have come about 8 or 9 minutes, 10 minutes, going to be over time, but because some people have joined later, can I just get another group photo to ensure that we can also keep this as part of our history? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'm staying over time as well. All right, look at the camera. 3, oh, someone's coming on. All right, look at the camera. 3, 2, 1. And one more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, this will be posted and will be with notes as well. So please do share with your networks and hope to be working with you all for the next Human Rights Conference in DC. Bye.
Thank you so much, friends and colleagues. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you,
Be in
Midnight.
touch.
Yes, stay
Thank you so
safe.
much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.